Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are relacing up our skates and diving deep into the history of one of hockey's most iconic and polarizing franchises, the Toronto Maple Leafs. From Stanley Cup dynasties to decades of heartache. Their story is a roller coaster of triumphs and tribulations that has captivated fans for over a century. So grab your jersey and let's head back in time. Our story begins not with the Maple Leafs, but with the Toronto Arenas. In 1917, as the National Hockey League was formed, the team from Toronto was one of its founding members. And guess what? Made an immediate impact, winning the very first NHL Stanley Cup in 1918. It was a spectacular start, but financial troubles soon plagued the organization. By 1919, the team was sold and rebranded as the Toronto St. Patricks, paying homage to the city's growing Irish population. Sporting green and white jerseys, the St. Pats found success of their own, capturing the Stanley Cup in 1922. However, the team's identity was about to change forever. In 1927, Conn Smythe, a name that would become synonymous with Toronto hockey, purchased the team. He immediately renamed them the Toronto Maple Leafs, a patriotic nod to Canada's national symbol and the maple leaf. Insignia worn by Canadian soldiers in World War I, Smythe also changed the team's colors to the iconic blue and white we know today. He famously said, "The blue and white would wear well," and would represent the blue of the Canadian skies and the white of the snow. This wasn't just a name change. It was the birth of a brand, an identity that would endure for generations. With a new name and a new vision, the Leafs needed a new home. Smythe spearheaded the construction of Maple Leaf Gardens, an arena built in an astonishingly short period during the Great Depression. It opened its doors in November 1931. And in that very first season, the Leafs, led by the legendary kid line of Charlie Conacher, Busher Jackson, and Joe Primo, brought the Stanley Cup back to Toronto. The Gardens quickly became known as the Cash Box on Carlton Street, a cathedral of hockey where legends would be made. The 1940s marked the first true dynasty for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Under the leadership of Coach Hopday and featuring stars like Syl Apps, Ted Teeter Kennedy, and the towering presence of goalie Turk Broda, the team became a powerhouse. Their most incredible feat came in the 1942 Stanley Cup Final, down 3-0 against the Detroit Red Wings. The Leafs mounted the greatest comeback in professional sports history, storming back to win the series in 7 games. It's a record that has never been repeated in a final series. This incredible victory kicked off a period of dominance, with the Leafs winning 5 Stanley Cups in the decade, including 3 consecutive championships from 1947 to 1949. The 1950s were a period of transition. The team remained competitive, but the Montreal Canadiens, led by Maurice Rocket Richard, were beginning their own legendary dynasty. The rivalry between the Leafs and the Habs intensified, becoming the most storied rivalry in all of hockey. While the Leafs did capture a Stanley Cup in 1951, thanks to Bill Barilko's famous overtime goal, the decade largely belonged to Montreal. Barilko tragically disappeared on a fishing trip that summer, and his body wasn't found until 1962. The same year, the Leafs won their next Stanley Cup. The coincidence became a part of hockey folklore. As the 1960s dawned, so did another golden era for the Maple Leafs. With Punch Imlach as the fiery head coach and general manager, the team was a mix of grizzled veterans and emerging talent. The roster was stacked with future Hall of Famers: Frank Mahovlich, Red Kelly, Johnny Bower in goal, the tough-as-nails Tim Horton, and the inspirational captain George the Chief Armstrong. And, of course, there was Dave Keon, a masterful two-way center who would become one of the greatest players in franchise history. This veteran-laden team captured 3 straight Stanley Cups from 1962 to 1964, cementing their place as a dynasty. Then came 1967. It was Canada's centennial year, and the Stanley Cup Final pitted the aging Toronto Maple Leafs against their bitter rivals, the dominant Montreal Canadiens, who were favorites to win the Cup in their home city, which was also hosting Expo 67. But the old guard of the Leafs had one last magical run in them. In a stunning upset, they defeated the Canadiens in 6 games. It was their 13th Stanley Cup, a seemingly impossible victory that capped off the original 6 era. Little did anyone know, it would be their last. The image of George Armstrong hoisting the cup remains one of the most cherished in Leafs history. But it also marks the beginning of a championship drought that has now spanned over half a century. The 1970s and 80s were defined by charismatic players and crushing disappointments. The brilliant Darryl Sittler, who famously set an NHL record with 10 points in a single game. And the dynamic Bird Salming, a Swedish pioneer who shattered stereotypes about European players, became the faces of the franchise. They gave fans moments of brilliance, but playoff success remained elusive. The team was often good, but never quite good enough to get over the hump, frequently falling to powerhouse teams like the Canadiens, the Islanders, or the Flyers. The era was also marked by the controversial and often criticized ownership of Harold Ballard, a period many fans would rather forget. The early 1990s brought a resurgence of hope. With Cliff Fletcher as the general manager, the Leafs acquired superstar Doug Gilmour in a blockbuster trade. Killer Gilmour's passion and skill electrified the city, alongside players like Wendell Clark and Dave Andreychuk. And with Pat Burns behind the bench, the Leafs became one of the league's toughest and most exciting teams. They made back-to-back runs to the conference finals in 1993 and 1994. The 93 series against the Los Angeles Kings is infamous for a missed high-sticking call on Wayne Gretzky, a moment that still haunts Leafs fans to this day. The team was just one win away from the Stanley Cup Final, but it wasn't to be. The late 90s and early 2000s saw another competitive era, led by Captain Mats Sundin. The team moved from the historic Maple Leaf Gardens to the modern Air Canada Centre, now Scotiabank Arena, in 1999, under coach Pat Quinn. The Sundin-led Leafs, featuring players like Curtis, Joseph, Gary Roberts, and Alexander Mogilny, were consistent playoff contenders. They made 2 more trips to the Eastern Conference Finals, but again couldn't break through to the final round. Sundin became the franchise's all-time leader in goals and points, a beloved captain who carried the team with class and dignity through years of near misses. The post-lockout era and into the 2010s were some of the darkest times for the franchise. A long playoff drought, questionable management decisions, and a painful Game 7 collapse against the Boston Bruins in 2013 left the fanbase frustrated and disheartened. It was clear a new direction was needed. That direction came with the hiring of Brendan Shanahan as team president, who initiated a full-scale Shanaplan rebuild. The team bottomed out, drafting high and accumulating assets. That rebuild led to the current era, drafting franchise cornerstones like Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander, and later adding star captain John Tavares. This new generation of Maple Leafs has rewritten the team's record books, becoming one of the most skilled and high-scoring teams in the entire league. They've brought regular season success and excitement back to Toronto in a massive way. However, playoff demons have continued to linger, with a series of heartbreaking first-round exits. The quest to overcome that final hurdle and end the long Stanley Cup drought is what currently defines the team and its passionate, ever-hopeful fan base. From the arenas to the St. Pats, to the dynasties of the 40s and 60s, through the eras of Sittler, Gilmour, and Sundin. And now into the Matthews era, the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs is a rich and dramatic saga. It's a story of glory and heartbreak, of legendary players and unforgettable moments. For the millions who bleed blue and white, it's more than just a hockey team. It's a part of their identity. The journey continues, and the hope for that 14th Stanley Cup burns as brightly as ever. Thanks so much for watching. What's your favorite moment in Leafs history? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into hockey history. We'll see you in the next one.